Hey guys, how you doing? Welcome to Rotter 2 Brief Saltwater Aquarium Care every Saturday morning. I didn't have plans on making a video, so I'm going to give you an update since is it the 1st of September? I believe it is. And I just want to show you the tank here, and I want to give you an update on what's going on and what I'm thinking about doing. So, happy Saturday. Hopefully all you guys are doing really well. And nice to see you guys. I figured I'd open up a live stream since I haven't done it in a while. That way you guys can, ask questions, but more importantly, talk amongst yourselves and chat together, because I know a lot of you guys have made friends with each other through our community, and it gives you a chance to also live chat with each other. Before I start, I just want to let you know that I'm really happy that the community is so great. Don't forget to check out the video description for all the links, for all the things I get on Amazon. Everything I use on this aquarium I get on Amazon. And check the video description for the whole list of stuff. Also, in the video description is the Facebook link to the Rotter 2 Brief Saltwater Aquarium Care Group. It's a great community. You can post photos or videos of your aquarium. You can ask questions. You can help people out. Really great community. Also, a special shout out to the moderators who make that place a really cool place, but it's already a really cool place without them doing much work. As I always say, there's no jerks allowed in that forum, so check that out as well. Also, in the link in the video description, I've got a link for a book I wrote on how to kill ick and marine velvet for good, permanently, 100% forever, on Amazon. I wrote a book, and it's available for a few bucks. Check it out. And get it for your Kindle. So with that, let's get started. Just wanted to kind of hang out and chat with you guys and show you the tank. So, hey Wave Guide, what's going on? Good morning, happy Saturday, thank God. And it's going to be a 3-day weekend for most of us. Labor Day on Monday. So, oh, you're welcome. Lamond Gould, yes, sugar dosing. What's up, Gary? Yeah, sugar dosing is really inexpensive. And it's carbon dosing, and sugar feeds bacteria. In this case, it feeds the anaerobic bacteria that gets rid of the nitrates in your aquarium. You can use vodka, or you can use white vinegar, or you can buy store-bought stuff by Secum, whatever. I still don't know how to pronounce it, whatever, it doesn't matter. But sugar is the cheapest, and I dose that every day in this tank. So, hopefully all you guys are doing well, the fish are doing well. Going to do a water change later today, and everyone's doing great. My zoanthid coral frag is doing really well in the 4-gallon aquarium. It's an all-in-one 4-gallon aquarium down in the basement. I'm keeping that guy in there for another couple weeks to make sure that there's no, ick or marine velvet in the water that came in on the fish store. So after a couple more weeks, I'm going to put this guy in. For those of you who saw the video before, I did dose this tank with copper by Secum, whatever, and I used a half dose. There was not ick in this tank. It's just a little experiment I'm doing because people say once you put copper in your main tank and then if you introduce coral, they'll all die. So I'm going to prove that wrong. In fact, I got a handful of subscribers that said they did the same thing and their corals are thriving. You don't want to put it in your tank. If you do have corals in here, it's too much for them. But I'm proving that you can put it in a tank that's only fish and rock and sand, and then after about a month or two, you can take it out through water changes and whatever, protein skimmer, whatever you have, and then you can start putting corals in. This is mainly for people who have a fish only tank and are using your main tank for a quarantine tank. You get new fish, you put them in, and then you put the copper solution in, which kills the ick marine velvet parasite. Then you want to put coral in, introduce coral for the first time. You can put corals in afterwards. A lot of people will just tear down their tanks thinking they got 1 drop of copper solution in their tank, so they cannot ever put coral in this tank. So I'm going to prove that wrong, as a handful of my subscribers already have. But, important note, if you do have coral in here, you can't put copper in your tank. Cannot put the liquid copper in there. So I think what I'm going to do today is I'm going to do a water change. I've got 2 sumps in the bottom of this, joined by a 1-inch PVC pipe to balance the water load between them. And one has an eShops 200 skimmer, which is awesome. I love eShops. The motor inside that protein skimmer is made in Italy. It's awesome. I've always used eShops, never fails me. And when you buy a protein skimmer, you always want to buy a protein skimmer that's rated for more than your tank. So this is a 125-gallon tank. I got a 200-gallon rated protein skimmer. The other end, I found a really good deal on Amazon, which they're not available on Amazon anymore, but it's rated for a 300-gallon tank. So in my second sump, which is a DIY, I just bought a big Rubbermaid container, and I'll show you that in a second. That's what's connecting to my eShops small sump. I have two sumps. One's an eShops with an eShops protein skimmer. The other one is just a Rubbermaid container. They're connected by that 1-inch PVC pipe. In that other one, I just have about 1 inch to 1.5 inches of Miracle Mud, which didn't do too much for this tank, to be honest. I might just want to get rid of the Miracle Mud and put some sand in that second sump, right? As an extra substrate to add to this. Instead of putting more sand in the tank, I'll just put like 2 or 3 inches, or 4 inches probably, in that Rubbermaid sump. And then I'll also put my 300-gallon rated protein skimmer, that's a beast, in that second sump as well. So then I'll have 300 plus 200 is 500. I'll have protein skimming, which is rated at 500 gallons for this 125-gallon tank, minus rock and sand. We're probably looking at, I don't know, 95 gallons, and then plus the other 40 gallons between the two sumps down below, maybe 30 gallons, and maybe 40. And so I'm still way covered with protein skimming. And a protein skimmer, for those of you who don't know, I'm going to show you that as well. A protein skimmer, it looks like a very large cone, and there's a motor at the bottom, and it creates a bunch of bubbles. And as those bubbles rise to the top of the cone, they pop. And these are thousands and thousands of micro bubbles. And when they pop, hey Lamont, what's up? Thanks, dude. Lamont, thank you so much for your kind contribution. I need it so I can pay the mortgage. Because this channel ain't paying much. Thank you so much. Shout out to Lamont. Thank you so much for that kind contribution. So, what was I saying? You're awesome. Thank you. Okay, so as those bubbles pop, what's on the outside of those bubbles inside that cone is all the debris and stuff. Just like if you would blow bubbles as a little kid, as that bubble floats through the air, it picks up dust and pollen and it sticks to the bubble. What happens when that bubble pops? Well, all that stuff falls back to the ground, the microscopic dust particles and pollen and all that. Well, instead of it falling to the ground, when those bubbles pop, all that stuff falls into a collection cup and then you dump it out. And it looks nasty. It looks like coffee, sludge. And that's all the fish waste and everything that's in the water that's about to break down and cause your nitrate levels to rise. And nitrates you don't want in your tank. When the cycle, I'm just rambling, sorry. In your aquarium, it's nothing more than an elegant bathroom, an elegant toilet that looks really pretty. And it's filled with fish waste and urine, which is ammonia. And if you don't get the ammonia out of there, your fish will die because ammonia is toxic and it'll kill them. So how do the fish stay in here living well? Well, you need bacteria in your aquarium, as you all know. And I'm saying this for those of you new to the hobby. And bacteria will basically eat that ammonia and turn it into nitrites with an I. And the nitrites break down into nitrates. Nitrates the fish can handle, but you want nitrates to be as low as possible, around the 0 mark to the 5 mark. You can get a nitrate test. Corals do not like nitrates at all, but they can thrive in a tank that has 5 nitrates, even 10, but it's recommended to stay at 5 nitrates or below. So how do you get rid of these nitrates? You can do water changes weekly, minimum of 10%. Or you can get a protein skimmer, which is what I discussed, and I'm going to show you that in a minute. Make sure you do not overfeed your fish because the food will break down and get caught between the rocks and it'll rot, and then that'll cause ammonia, which is going to break down into nitrites and then nitrates. You also want to have your rocks spaced apart. Who just gave me $1.99? Lamond again. Man, thank you so much. Dude, you're so kind. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It means so much. It means that I'm doing something right. I'm glad you appreciate the content, and thank you for watching. So that's what you do. I know it's kind of a hassle, but you gotta do a weekly water change. You know what? I let this tank go for a little while, and it started to turn green, and you know, it was just algae was building up on the glass. And so I don't know, all these people that say they never do water changes, I don't know how they're getting away with it, man, because I was doing a water change once a month, and it just went downhill, and it wasn't clear like this. It didn't look good like this. You could tell there was a greenish tinge to it. So weekly water change, 10% at least. I'm not saying no water changes are bad. I'm just saying I don't know how those guys pull it off. But I do a 10% water change weekly, clean my protein skimmer twice a year. I take it outside, I hose it down so it's nice and clean. And that's pretty much what I do. I've noticed I'm getting my coralline algae back on the aquarium glass and the side over here you can see. And on my power heads. But the fish are really happy. Everyone's looking good. I'm really happy with the way the tank is looking. Sandbed, I love it. I went bare bottom, no sand for 1 year. And even my mandarin survived because copepods, amphipods, what they eat only lives in the sand and the rock on the glass in your overflows. But with no sand at all, the mandarin was thriving and doing really well. So the whole tank is doing good. Later today, I'm going to put that second protein skimmer in. I've been lazy. I don't really need it. But with these big fish in this tank, they go to the bathroom a lot. The tangs, the sailfin tang you see right there that's striped. My blue fowlery tang that's trying to get food that does not exist at the surface of the water. He is big. He goes to the washroom an awful lot. Oh, Sean, excellent point. You've got a 10-gallon reef. You can do a 50% water change with a 5-gallon bucket. That's an excellent point. When I started out in the hobby, I had a 28-gallon nanocube, and with the sand and the rock, let's just say 20 gallons. So I was doing like a 30% water change every week, and I never had a problem with nitrate issues. People say that smaller tanks are unstable. I don't agree with that because of what you just said. It's so much, look, it's so much easier to do a 50% water change in a 20-gallon tank than it is a 50% water change in a 125-gallon tank. SPS, awesome. I was doing that as well. So, okay, the more water volume you have, people say the more stable the tank is. And I get that, because if you've got nitrates from this amount of fish in a smaller aquarium, like 125 gallon, compared to the same fish family here in a 300 gallon, yes, you're going to have less nitrates because there's a lot more water volume, so it won't be an issue. So that's where they get their stability from. But you got to find that balance. Like ideally, it would be great to have this fish family in a 300 gallon tank, or even a, 256 or 265, which is what I wanted to get. What I'd really love to get, because this tank is 6 feet long, I want to get an 8-foot long tank. Don't know when that's going to happen or if it'll ever happen, but I love the 125. It's perfect for me. I went from 28 gallon to 75 gallon, and then a year later, I just wasn't happy with the 75 gallon, mainly because the fowlery tank, this dude right here, was getting big really fast. So I don't like tall tanks. They're harder to clean, and I'd rather have a long tank because the fish generally will swim from left to right, not up and down. So what I did is I got the 6 foot long tank, and then I put my rocks in the middle of my aquarium to give them more swimming room, so they swim in front of the rocks, behind the rocks, between the rocks. I made a little cave there for them. There's a space there they can swim between, so they can swim between, up and around, behind. I'd like to get more rock in here to try and stack it a little higher, but it's not needed. In fact, my nitrates are really good. There was enough bacteria in here to kill the ammonia and everything when I had no sand and just this amount of rock. So I'll back up a little bit to show you what the tank looks like from a distance. It looks like the fish are almost crowded, but they're not. When you see it like this, see? There's enough swim space for them. Now these at the top are nothing, where is it? These at the top are nothing more than gas pipes for gas lines, and I spray painted them black. And I made my own makeshift stand when I had T5 lighting, which I loved, but it was way too bright. Couldn't enjoy the tank because it would blind you. So I just keep them there because when I do a water change, I've got this really cool Phoenix light with a strip of blue and a strip of white. There's no timers, just an on-off switch for the blues and an on-off switch for the whites. And it throws off a lot of light. And it was really inexpensive. I think it was like $70 for a 4-foot light, and it's a 6-foot long tank. But guess what? It illuminates it really well, as you can see. And the corals love it. When I had a anemone in here and other corals, star polyps, frog spawn, zoanthids, Duncan coral, they thrived with that light. So that's great. What I might do eventually, even though I don't need to do it, is get another 4-foot and stagger them. So I've got most of the light in the middle where they overlap, and then 1 foot on the left and 1 foot on the right for lighting. So I may do that. But right now the tank's looking great. I mean, if I was going to upgrade, I would get an 8-foot long tank so they have more swimming room. I just think long tanks just look killer. I love the long tanks. I never thought I'd have a large aquarium. Never. And I found a deal on this. I got it brand new. It's a Marineland tank. The tank, brand new, I believe, was $700. They're having a sale. The local reef store that I love. And the stand, I don't know, I think it was like $250. So I think I got the whole thing for like a little under $1,000, brand new. I can't remember, something like $900. But, so there's the tank. Let me show you guys the underneath of it again with my protein skimmer. Yeah, I'd recommend the Marineland. So, right here, this is overflow 1, where the water flows off the top through slits in the top, flows down to the bottom, comes down. Water goes through my rotor tube, which is nothing more than a clear 3-inch PVC with foam in it. I have to change it. After a week, that's what it looks like. It catches the water, captures all the solids and most of the fish waste and uneaten food. It goes down here into the water where it's churned. That's what a protein skimmer looks like. And you can see there's the protein line. It's gunky. Can't really tell, but that's all the sludge that's being bubbled up through, and as the bubbles flow to the top and they pop, it flows over, and that's where the sludge is. You unscrew the top of the protein skimmer and you dump all that in your neighbor's yard, okay? And then you just screw it back on and you're ready. You can control the flow for the amount of bubbles that are flowing, so you can skim wet, which means you're going to get water and sludge collected faster, or you can have it skim dry, which means it's going to skim slower, but a more highly concentrated skim, so it's a thicker sludge. Alright? That's right, Lamond. That's what he gets for being a jerk. Then this PVC pipe here, I drilled in the side of my eShop's sump into my Rubbermaid container. I mean, I've seen, as you guys have as well, these sumps that are so expensive, like $600. Screw that. So I got a Rubbermaid container. I don't know how many gallons it is, but it's rather large. That's what she said. Dual flow is working awesome, Roberto. Just awesome. So I've got a return pump going back to the tank on that side and that one in the one chamber. And I've got a return pump in this one as well. Again, the water flows from the top on the left side through here, coming down here, and I've got another rotor tube. You can see more clearly the 3-inch clear PVC. You don't need a clear PVC. You can just go to your hardware store, Home Depot or whatever, and just get a 3-inch or 4-inch, whatever. And I just simply put foam in there, and then weekly I just take the foam out and put it back in. And it works like a filter stock, but the reason why I like this more is there's really nothing to clean at all. I just take that foam piece out, which is really inexpensive. I got a whole foam roll from Amazon, which is in the video description below of all my videos. I just cut it to shape, throw it in there, and I take it out, throw a new one in. And the reason why I like this over some socks, I don't have to clean anything. And that foam never touches the water. It's like 2 to 3 inches above the water line in both sumps. Your sump sock, yeah, you're capturing all that stuff, but the sump sock stays in your water. So all that waste and garbage and fish waste and uneaten food that's rotting, it's in your water column. Yeah, you're catching it, but it's still floating in your water column. I don't like that. So it catches the stuff, and then the water just flows out into the sump. So in this other sump, I've got a couple pieces of rock. There's a bunch of copepods and amphipods in there. The white grates in here don't do anything. I used to have a white grate underneath here with the foam on top of the white grate to capture the stuff, but I decided to do the rotor tube instead. I'm looking for better ways to filter the water even more, but I think later today I'm going to put my second protein skimmer in here, which is a 300-gallon, valued at 300 gallons of filtration. Technically, I could just use that one protein skimmer in here, but I like the idea of having a protein skimmer in this sump and the protein skimmer in this sump. This sump is rather small. It's just large enough to house my my S200 eShops protein skimmer, and in the very small chamber I've got one return pump. I used to have just this one eShops sump for the entire aquarium. And when I would turn off all the pumps to do a water change or feed them, I shut everything down when I feed them or do a water change. The water line would rise up to here. So it was safe enough. And 2 pumps barely fit in the chamber back here that you can't see because it's too dark. But I decided to add more water to the aquarium. Usually the water line is up to here, as you can see, but I haven't put any in here due to the evaporation. I haven't added any water in about a week, so it's gone down, but the salinity is still cool. So that's what I'm thinking about doing. Everything's looking good. Fish are looking good. The coral is doing well downstairs in the basement. I'm going to put that guy in another couple weeks. Probably going to buy another piece of coral or 2. I love the Duncans and the star polyps, so I'm going to probably get those in a couple weeks. Throw those in the coral quarantine tank, because nothing ever goes in this aquarium, in my main aquarium, until it's been quarantined downstairs for 6 weeks. And again, the reason being is because most, if not all, reef stores, when they have fish come in, those fish can have parasites on them, as I've tried to get into your guys' heads time and time again, and so many of you have listened and your tanks are thriving because of it. You don't use garlic, you don't do any of this other garbage stuff. You do what I'm trying to teach you on the channel and all the other really great reefers. I'm not saying I'm a great reefer, I'm just saying I know what works. I research my ass off, and this is what works. Watch all my videos. You'll have mass success. You'll never have ick parasite or marine velvet in your aquarium again. Or you can buy my book on Amazon. It's a few bucks if you want to have something always handy on you. I talk so much more in depth on the parasites and everything. But anyway, if there's anything in the water in the reef store, and most of the time there is, you don't just want to put that fish or that coral in your tank. because it introduces all that nasty stuff, and then the parasites multiply like a fiend, and then you're in really big trouble. So I put all coral in that 4-gallon quarantine tank in the basement. Let it sit there for 6 weeks. No copper, no nothing. I just have another Phoenix light that's 2 feet long, the same as what's on this tank, and no timer on it. It just goes on and off daily. I keep it on for about 10 hours, shut it off before I go to bed. After 6 weeks, the coral get put in this tank. Why 6 weeks? Because if there's any parasites in the water, there's no fish in that quarantine tank, and they live on fish only, and they feed on fish only. So the parasites in the quarantine tank will starve, they'll die, and their period of gestation is like 28 days. So I keep an extra 2 weeks just to make sure so the water's clean. Important thing to remember, if you decide after the 5th week, oh, I gotta have this coral, it's on sale, I love it so much, and you take it and you put it in your quarantine tank with the other coral, you guessed it, the clock starts at 0 because you may have just introduced parasites. Now you gotta wait another 5 weeks. I'd recommend starting another quarantine tank or purchasing the coral at another period of time, like a week later. So every time you introduce something new, that 5-week or 6-week period of quarantine has to start from scratch. I have a second tank for fish only quarantine. All right, so one for corals and inverts with no copper solution. The second one for fish only, where I use a mild copper solution, and copper is what kills ick. All right, and it looks like this. I haven't used this in so long, but this is what I'm talking about. Cupramine by Secum or Secum. There is instructions, of course, and I always highly recommend dosing half of what they say. If they say put 1 drop for every gallon of saltwater aquarium, I would do half a drop. Or if you've got a 100-gallon tank, it's 50 drops, okay? Half a dose is more than effective, because if you dose what they recommend, it's incredibly close to toxic levels, and it will kill your fish. It's like chemotherapy for fish, and you don't want to get, and it's almost impossible to test for copper in the water. So because of that, I just said, you know what, let me cut it in half, because one of the reef stores that I get my fish from, they always have their fish in a mild copper solution, like they say 10 to 15% the recommended dose to keep their fish healthy, and they've never had a problem. I've never had a problem with fish where I get them from. But so I keep them in quarantine for 6 weeks with a half a dose. I always do half a dose, and right now this tank has half a dose. Roberto, great question. Why copper? Because this copper solution kills the parasites. So if there's any parasites in an aquarium, your quarantine tank, and you put this copper liquid, it looks like blue water, it's liquid. This will kill the parasites. They get into the body of your fish, they eat the fish from the inside out. When they release themselves to swim around in the aquarium, they'll burrow into the sand where they encrust in an eggshell, and they multiply by the hundreds every 28 days. When they release themselves from the fish, if there's copper present in the water, it just kills them. It's insanely toxic to the parasites, and it fries the hell out of them. They die. So that's why you want to use copper in the quarantine tank with fish. But copper will kill your corals. That's why you want to have 2 separate quarantine tanks. One for 6 weeks with coral in it with no copper. Also, you can put your inverts like your shrimp and snails in there. The other tank for 6 weeks with copper solution, half dose for your fish. Dose how often they say on the bottle. When I was using it, when I bring in a fish, what I do is I always dose 50%. I'll dose 50% the first day. I'll wait, do nothing the second day, which is what the bottle recommends. The third day, I'll do a water change. I'll put the full dose in, which is cut in half again, 50%. So basically, I'll do a water change every other day, and then I'll dose the 50% every other day for a week. The second week, I'll dose every third day. The fourth week, I'll give them a break so they're just swimming in salt water. Hey, what's going on, Thomas? And the fifth week, I'll do the full dose again, which is 50% of the recommended, and I'll repeat that cycle like that. As a quarantine tank, as you know, I spoke in the beginning of this video, you got to have bacteria. Don't think that you could go out today and get an aquarium and just start a quarantine tank. That quarantine tank has to cycle. Remember I said the ammonia from fish pee and uneaten food will break down rapidly, and it will kill your fish within 2 days if you don't have that tank cycled. So what I would recommend if you do have an aquarium, a really good thing to do, like the foam in my rotor tube, that's got a bunch of bacteria in it. So I would literally take that and just let it float in your new quarantine tank that you just set up. Hey Cindy, what's going on? So I would float that in your quarantine tank so it has bacteria already in that foam, or take a rock that you don't have plans on putting back in this tank. Take something that is littered with bacteria for at least a month in your main tank, and so it'll kill the ammonia so your fish won't die. You got to have bacteria in that quarantine tank or any brand new tank that you start. If you say, hey, I'm just starting an aquarium and I want to buy a fish and I have no bacteria, you're going to have to cycle that tank. And it's going to be about a month or 2 process. And yeah, you can buy bacteria out of a bottle, but it might be expired, blah, blah, blah. So what I would do, this may be a silly question, but with antibiotics, you have to complete a full dosage. So if you don't complete a full dose of copper, is it possible to create copper resistant? Great question. No. The copper has no effect on bacteria at all, which is a good thing. Whether it's anaerobic bacteria or aerobic bacteria, copper does not affect the bacteria. Great question. It only kills parasites. So it's like chemotherapy for fish. Parasites being the cancer. So it doesn't affect the bacteria, luckily. Great question. So if you are starting a brand new aquarium, and I've got videos on this, or a brand new quarantine tank, I would either put foam in there, get some foam or a rock or something from somebody that has bacteria on it from their aquarium. If you've got nothing, set up your quarantine tank, go to the butcher, get some cocktail shrimp, dead shrimp that you're going to eat. I would just dice it up in quarters or just throw the whole thing in, let it rot. And as it rots, bacteria is going to grow and multiply in your aquarium. All right? Also, ammonia is going to grow in your aquarium. The ammonia is going to spike, and if you put a fish in there, it's going to die from ammonia shock, ammonia poisoning. It's toxic. So let the ammonia rise on its own, let the bacteria grow on its own, and then get yourself an ammonia test kit. And once that ammonia drops to 0, you know you've got enough bacteria in your aquarium where it can now handle a fish. Now your tank is cycled, and now you can put 1 or 2 small fish in that you buy from the store. Leave them there for 6 weeks with copper solution. Remember, 50% dose. After you're done dosing 50%, hey, Bobby J, what's up, dude? How you doing, man? Good to see you. Throw them in your main tank, okay? I know I covered a lot. You guys know most of this already, but I just wanted to cover it with you. Again, I just babble, sorry. Any questions? Can you not take the water you change from your display tank and start your quarantine? Excellent question. You can use the water from your main tank in your quarantine tank. Hey, Lamont, thank you so much. Thank you so much. People are like, but wait a minute. I got an ick outbreak in my water. I can't use this water in my quarantine tank. Yes, you can, because remember, that parasite is going to die at the hands of the copper solution in your quarantine tank. So yes, that's what I did actually when I started this. I had no parasites in here, but I used this water to start my quarantine tank for my coral down in the basement. And I got videos on that coral that I did last week. It looks really good. really thriving well. Good question, Thomas. Is it true that fish adapt to their growth to the size of the aquarium? Yeah, that's totally true. Large fish will grow large. These guys are growing large. They're hiding. My Lavalier tang right there, he's about 9 inches, 10 inches long. If I put this guy in a bigger tank, he's going to grow bigger. There's a little guy here, the Harlequin Sweet Lips. He or she is hiding back there. It's the brown and white, cool looking fish. That guy or girl is very tiny, the size of one of these clownfish, but they will grow to be about 2 feet long. Going to require a much larger aquarium, but if you keep them in this size, yeah, it'll stunt their growth. So he'll get to maybe a foot long. Can I put tangs? Hey Roberto, can I put tangs in a 60-inch? Yes, you can. Can I put substrate on a quarantine tank? Yes, you can. Great question. I have sand in my 4-gallon aquarium tank downstairs that I use for quarantine for the coral, because some people say don't do it. And I used to say don't do it, because as the parasites encrust into a shell, yeah, Thomas, right, they encrust in the sand bed of your aquarium. But guess what? If you got the copper solution in your water column and those eggs hatch, they're going to be greeted with copper in the water and they're going to die. So yeah, that's totally fine. You can have substrate in there. Great question. In fact, you know what you could do? If you have your main tank, go ahead and take out some of the substrate or some of the sand bed and use that to start your quarantine tank. That would be an excellent way to instantly cycle your quarantine tank, because water alone won't do it. The bacteria needs to be in something, but just don't disturb the sand bed too much, okay? Because if you have a deep sand bed and you disturb it, all the rotting food and fish waste that has gotten to the bottom of the sand bed, it's going to release those nitrates and it's going to cause a problem for your tank. Be extremely, extremely careful if that's what you want to do. Go really slow and then replace the sand bed in here. I wouldn't recommend doing that, but you can certainly do that. Or if you have a sand bed like I do down below in my second sump, you could disturb that, turn off all the pumps, take that out, or use a rock, or use foam, or use what I've done in the past is I've used a sump sock, and then I threw it away after the small tank was cycled. Coralline algae's tank. Coralline algae, I lost your comment. Coralline is growing in your tank slowly, and I lost your comment. Hold on. There it is. Coralline algae in my tank is growing slow. Tank has been up for 7 months. Did water tested on just about everything. It looks good. Coralline. Coralline comes and goes. Is that normal? Yeah, that's normal. You know what? One way to keep your coralline algae is to do your water changes, and then after you do your water changes, to keep those trace elements fresh and at the level that is required for coralline algae. Coralline algae requires a really good chemistry in your system, and if you have it, which is the purple on the rock, take a scraper and scrape it off. Alright, Sean, same with you. Well, I'm going to tell you guys how to grow it more. So, you see how I've got coralline algae right here? This purple, that's on my overflow. Get yourself a metal scraper or something and scrape that down off of your glass and off of your walls, wherever you got it. Those little spores, Lamont, dude, awesome, man. Thank you so much for the kind and generous cash. Now I can eat tonight. I'll get myself one of those good Healthy Choice TV dinners. Those are good. Not that Swanson crap from the 70s. Thank you so much, man. Man, you're so awesome. Thank you so much. Hey, Reefs Toll 23, what's up? Good morning. Hello, everybody. So scrape your coralline algae off, and those spores are going to float through your water column. They're going to attach to the rock and everywhere else, and it's going to continue to grow. Here's another huge tip for coralline algae growth. Make sure you do your water changes, make sure your water is clean. Also, make sure your calcium level is at 500 to 550. I don't dose anything in my water, I just do water changes. But when I do my water changes, I put like a quarter cup of calcium crystals. So you don't have to eat fish tonight, right? No, I'm not eating these fish, no. How far can I go with no water changes? I would say once every 2 weeks, which is sometimes what I do. Yes, 500. 500 to 550 calcium level, and that's what I keep this at. I haven't tested. I'll have to test it and let you guys know. But usually it's around 4 to 450. But if you want to keep your coralline algae growing and multiplying and strong, you want to have your calcium level at 500 to 550. 500 is fine. I go for 500 to 550, and that's when I really saw a burst. It's nothing I really need to dose. I just put those calcium crystals in every other weekend when I do a water change. But I've been doing water changes every week since I've had aquariums, like 10%. So in this 125-gallon aquarium, I'll do a 10-gallon water change with a quarter cup of calcium crystals. Next weekend I won't add calcium crystals, okay? It works out great because the coralline algae needs that level of calcium if you want it to thrive. My rocks used to be such deep, vibrant purple, and I had those asteria, whatever, starfish, and I had thousands of them in here, and they just destroyed my coralline algae. So it's coming back. The tank is coming back, and I will have nice purple rock again. It's coming back really slow, as you can see here. That used to be completely purple. Now I've just got a lot of purple blotches. Oh, the sailfin tank says hi. You know what, Sean? Me too. I like to consider the coralline as a coral instead of algae as well. I feel the same way. But, man, I was looking at some videos of my 75-gallon aquarium a few years ago, which now my brother has the 75-gallon aquarium that I had. It was also a marine land aquarium. Oh, man, the coralline was just popping. It looked like I spray painted the rock purple. It was so vibrant. So, also with the 75-gallon, I did slightly larger water changes of 15 gallons every week. Because it was a smaller tank, I had better control of the trace elements coming in. Now I only do a 10-gallon water change weekly on a larger tank, which is this one, which is why I don't have as many trace elements, but it's doing really well. And again, I only use the Instant Ocean brand, which is good enough. I tried the Red Sea, which is great. Too much money for what it does. Are there any invertebrates in your 125-gallon? Yeah, there are. Just one. I don't have snails or anything. Let me show you this guy. It's a white, it's a thin stripe. That guy right there in the center. I wish he would turn around. There's the guy, the brown and white. Look how small he is, but he grew twice the size since I got him. These guys are really hard to keep, but he eats like a beast. That little guy right there. And he's going to get to be 2 feet long. And he's going to change his look too. All right, Thomas, I'll talk to you later. I can't wait to hear what it is. But I got a thin striped hermit crab. That guy was small when I got him. He changed shells. He's big. I wish he would turn around, but he won't. So that's the only invert I have. I don't have, anything else. I got no snails. I got no cleanup crew. All I have is amphipods and copepods. And that's it. Yeah, I saw him or her, and my son had to have him, so I got him. But they'll change in looks. It'll go from brown with white like a clown suit, and he'll just look completely different. Actually, people say they look ugly when they get older. They look more like a trout with tiny little white spots on a bluish gray body, but I'm looking forward to that. So someone I saw online successfully kept one, and it's doing really well. Bronx Reefer, what's up, dude? What's up? Haven't seen you in a while. Good to see you. Good morning. Good morning. I'm just going over updates on my tank and what I'm doing. I'm just talking about the fish. Just hanging out with you guys. So one of the reefers online, I don't know him, but he has one of these guys, and after 4 years, he's only 9 inches to 10 inches long. So this tank will be completely fine for that guy. Worst case is if he gets to be so large and he grows rapidly, which he won't in this tank, I am going to rehome him to the Shed Aquarium in Chicago, and he'll be in the huge community tank that's what, 500,000 gallons or something crazy like that. I'm not going to sell him. I'm not going to give him to somebody because I don't want him to die. I want him to be taken care of, and he'll go to the Shed Aquarium in Chicago. I'm sure they will have no problem taking him, but I don't know, maybe they'll say, well, we don't take fish from people. Well, hopefully that's not the case, but hopefully I won't even have to rehome him. Or maybe I win lottery and I get like a big tank that I can scuba dive in, which then it won't be a problem. How cool would that be? I get to swim with the fish. Not in the mafia way, of course, but, you know, with a scuba suit. So my plan is to put more sand in my MacGyver makeshift DIY sump below, like another inch or two of sand, because the deeper the sand bed, the better the nitrate exporting, because as the fish food and fish waste gets trapped in the sand bed, the deeper the sand bed, the less oxygen. And the less oxygen you have, that anaerobic bacteria is going to live where there's no oxygen. And that anaerobic bacteria will eat the rotting food and fish waste, turn it into nitrate gas. Nitrate gas will escape the sand bed, and that's why you've got to have some flow at the top. I've got a power head pointing to the top of the water to churn it, so it oxygenates it a little bit, but it also aids in the nitrate gas release out of your tank. That's why it's important, if you vacuum your sand bed, don't stir it up, because you're going to release those gases and cause a problem in your aquarium. That's why I recommend, I used to do that when I had smaller fish, but now that I have the tangs, I'm not disturbing the sand bed at all. I'll literally put the siphon in the water up to here, and I'll just take water out. I don't go near the sand bed. I might vacuum like a half an inch above it, but I will not disturb that sand bed. So, you know, as money, you know, allows, I'll put another inch sand bed in here, and I'll put another inch or two in that sump below, and that'll help with nitrate export. Let me feed these guys and then I'll sign off. I'm going to feed them Rod's food. You're going to see how crazy they get for this. Rod's. I only feed Rod's frozen fish food and leafy greens. David Miller. Now that you have done standard sandbed bare bottom and now we're without a hybrid sandbed bare bottom and building a hybrid, I think that's fine. I mean, I've had luck with no sandbed for 1 year, and I've had luck with sandbed. The reason I love the sand bed and a deep sand bed, I've never had a deep sand bed before. Ah, here he comes. Let me show you this guy. Thin striped hermit crab. The reason I like the sand bed and a deep sand bed is because of what I just said. It really aids in the life of the aquarium. It adds more life to the aquarium. It adds more copepods and amphipods. That's my dead Duncan coral. I got one head as a frag when I got it, and it had 50 heads on it. 50, and it died. So I like the deep sand bed because it adds life, amphipods, copepods. It aids in the export of the nitrates. It's really great, but you got to be careful not to disturb the sand bed. I love no sand bed because it's so much easier to clean. The power heads blow all along the bottom. It gets all the detritus and fish waste and which is fish waste, detritus, and uneaten food out of the aquarium. Lee and Mandy. Mandy, what's up? I haven't seen you in so long. How you doing? Good to see you. This dude is big. Look how big he is. So there's my index finger. This guy was half the size when I got him a year ago. He's a little beast. I love him. That's the only invert I have in the aquarium. Look, he's been trying to change shells, I think, but he decides to keep his second shell. He's got some coralline algae on his shell as well. So, you too, David. So, you know, either way, sandbed is great. I love the look of it. It looks natural, like an ocean reef. It aids in the life cycle. It aids in the nitrate export. Just don't disturb it. I would go with a deep sandbed. Just don't disturb it. But with sandbed also comes bristle worms, and I absolutely hate them. But no sandbed, it's easier to clean. It doesn't look as cool. But you know what you can do, and this is what I thought, completely get the sand out of your aquarium. All glass bottom like I had. But just put enough in there for looks. Never used crushed coral because crushed coral captures the uneaten food and fish waste, and it will rot in the sandbed, and it will make your nitrates go higher. Yes, you do not need a refugium if you have a deep sandbed. I'd much rather go the deep sandbed route because a refugium will actually do nothing in your aquarium for you. Nothing at all, unless you have a refugium the size that's 1/3 the size of your aquarium. You need a large refugium to even think about exporting nitrates. Scott from Mile High Reefers has a refugium in his basement, and his tank is upstairs. And his refugium is huge. He uses like an old barn trough for his sump, and part of that is a refugium. So Scott is doing it awesome. He's a friend of mine too. He's a good guy. Yeah, I used to have a refugium. What's the point, really? The only really good thing to having a regular size refugium that you can put in a second sump or part of your sump is it's going to house your amphipods and copepods. But really, you don't need it because you can make a copepod condo, which is where you just use like a bottle or something, or you know, put a pile of little pebbles in your corner of your aquarium, and put like a little plastic cup over it that's see-through, and drill some holes in it so the copepods can get out, but the fish can't get in. But they're going to live in the sand and in the rocks. You don't need a refugium. Yeah, Bobby, I guess it's cool. But it's in your sump, so you don't need it, you know? That's a good shot of the Fowlery tang, the blue guy with the orange dorsal fins. I love that guy. I was going to get a coal tang, and that guy was way too expensive, but I got him anyway. That was my birthday present to myself like 4 years ago. So they're all my favorite fish, but that guy he's one of my favorites. Do you have any sand sifters? I do not. That's one of the fish I want to get next. I used to have sand sifters. I love watching them. So the only thing that's really sifting my sand now is this thin striped hermit crab. He's in the corner now. He's the only invert I have, and he's the only thing that sifts the sand. So I'll probably get a couple sand sifters. I would love to get a starfish again. How do I keep the sand bed clean? I don't know. It just does it by itself. I don't do anything to it. It just stays that way. It just stays that way. The thin striped hermit crab does pretty much all the work. He walks all over the tank. He does a great job. And I just do water changes, and I've got the water flow set just right. I've got 2 power heads. I've got an MP40 right there that's blowing out. I've got a HYDROGEN that's blowing up. I got another HYDROGEN right here. I don't have expensive power heads. I was thinking about getting rid of the MP40 and just getting another HYDROGEN. I don't need all the fancy schmancy programmable power heads and all that. Yeah, high water flow keeps it pretty clean. Yep. And then when I do a water change every week, as I'm filling it back in with a return pump with the hose, I'll go over the rocks with the hose to blow off any uneaten food and fish waste. I don't really use a turkey baster anymore. I just clean the rocks weekly, so as I'm putting the water in with a pump, I blow off the rocks. Mandy, Jack is doing really well. For those of you who don't know, we've got 2 dogs, a German Shepherd. She's 2 years old. I've had her since she was 8 weeks, and Jack is going to be 15 in October. Unfortunately, I almost had to put him to sleep because it was time. But I believed it wasn't time for him to go yet. I nursed him back. It's a miracle of God. He's doing really well. Lamond, you just did your calcium test. It's 470 for 480. All right, good. Get it to 500. And you're going to see a little pop in your coralline algae. You're welcome. Make sure your rocks are clean of any uneaten food and fish waste. Use a turkey baster. Go in there, put a glove on. I don't really like getting my arms or hands in the water, especially after I had cuts. I did so much work in this tank. Yeah, thanks, Mandy. So I'm going to answer that in a second about the sweet lips. For the few sand sifting gobies, and each time I have to get rid of them because they kept piling the sand up over my arcs and coral, so I'll never buy another one. Yeah, you know what? When I had a sand sifting goby, I would remove the little pebbles. He would always place pebbles right here in a pile, and I'd remove them, and he'd get mad, and he would take them in his mouth, and he'd stack the rocks up again every single time. It was the coolest thing. Saltwater fish are so smart. So yeah, if you want your coralline algae to grow, make sure your calcium is 500 to 550, and also keep your rocks clean of debris, fish waste, and uneaten food, and you should do fine. What else was I going to answer? Someone asked a question. I can't remember what it was. Let me see. Oh yeah, the harlequin, the clown sweet lips are easy to care for. A lot of people say that, no, they are a difficult fish to care for. And that, again, is the little guy right here. They are very, very picky eaters. But he eats like a pig. And as they grow bigger, they will eat anything that fits in their mouth, including fish. I don't think I'm too concerned about him eating my clownfish, but he eats Rod's food, and he loves to eat. He doesn't eat pellets. For pellet food, the other clowns, this is the only other thing I'll feed. I use this. New Life Spectrum. Roberto, thanks for the $2. Man, you guys are so cool. Really appreciate it. You have no idea how much that means. Thank you so much. Let me feed these guys. Someone had another question. Let me see if I can bring it up because I lost it. I can't bring it up. I lost it. I want to feed these guys Rod's food, so you could. I have to get some more Rod's food today, but let me feed these guys. Roberto, thank you so much. Man, you're awesome. Thank you for the $2. It means an awful lot. Let me feed these guys. I'm going to turn off all the power heads and everything, protein skimmer, everything when I feed them, because I want the water completely still when I feed them. And thank you again, Roberto, for the $2. I really appreciate it. When I feed these guys, the water is completely still because I don't want anything going into the overflows. Hold on, I'm going to get the frozen Rod's food, and these guys are going to go to town on the food. Hold on. Okay, all the pumps are turned off. They know it's feeding time because when the pumps go off, they know. Look at them. So I got rods, frozen food, RODS. This is all I feed them, except the tangs also get leafy greens, collard greens. And I'm going to feed them. This is their food for the day. I always hand feed these guys. They go nuts. The Sweet Lips goes nuts too. They all love this stuff. I'll leave the pumps off for like 5 or 10 minutes. That way they can eat everything, pick it off the rocks, pick it off the sand. And the water gets a little cloudy in this area, but it clears up really quick. If you feed Rod's frozen food, never rinse it. I interviewed Rod, and I went to his house. It was so cool. And he said never rinse the frozen food because you lose a lot of the stuff that the fish need. Never use tap water. That's right. Don't do water changes if you're cycling your tank. Let me wash my hand. Hold on. All right, I'm back. You know what? I forgot that I had a cut on my finger and I put it in the tank, which it hurts just a little bit. But more importantly, about a year ago, I did a video that I actually got MRSA. It was so bad. I had a staph infection, had to be on antibiotics for 2 weeks because of all the, you can imagine how many strains of bacteria there are in this aquarium. It got into the cut. I didn't even think about it. So that's why I bought those thick rubber gloves that go up to your shoulder almost when I put my hand in the tank. So I washed my hand really good, and I'm hoping it'll be fine because MRSA was, man, you guys, it was hard to get rid of. MRSA is everywhere you go. Staph bacteria is everywhere you go. It's on everything you touch, but our bodies are capable of fighting it off. But I, for whatever reason, couldn't, and I got nailed with it, and I couldn't get rid of it. I had to be put on an extremely strong antibiotic that made me incredibly sick. I had to wash with this special soap. I had to do all these different things, and it finally left after like a month. So I would always have my hands in the tank. Never had a problem for a few years, and then all of a sudden I got destroyed. So the pumps are still off because these guys are still feeding. Yeah, Mandy, it was bad. And then I had pneumonia. Never had pneumonia before, but I had pneumonia at the beginning of the year. And then because of that, I was on antibiotics for 2 weeks. And then because I was so stripped of, my immune system was stripped because of 2 weeks of antibiotics and the pneumonia, I got staph infection again. So I have to just be really careful. So anyway, staph bacteria lives everywhere, including your skin. And if you get a cut, your body can fight it off. Most staph bacteria lives in your nose. But for some reason, mainly because I was on antibiotics, I had no way to protect myself. My immune system is at 0 because those antibiotics killed all the good and the bad bacteria in my system. I couldn't fight off the staph infection, the staph bacteria, and it destroyed me. All right, let me turn these pumps back on. Okay, so the guys got to feed. The pumps are back on. It's blowing around the remainder of the food. You can increase the pH of your fish tank by doing water changes. Please keep up on them. That is the single most important thing you can do. Another thing you can do, if your aquarium, whatever room it's in, if it's nice weather, open the windows. Let that fresh air in. It does help. It's a nice day here in Chicago. It's like 72 degrees. We got the water. Please don't use tap water because it's got metals in it. It's got chlorine in it. You've got to get yourself an RODI. An RODI unit. It connects to your water supply in your house, your sink faucet easily. It filters out all that stuff. And it's pure water that goes into a Rubbermaid container, and that's what I use for water changes. Yeah, RODI, that's right. Or you can buy it from the local REEF store, but I won't ever do that again for two reasons. You risk bringing parasites into your house. I'm paranoid with that. Who's to say the guy didn't have his hands in a tank getting fish for a little kid, and their water is more than likely contaminated with parasites. Then here you come with your water jugs to get salt water for your water change, and his hands are touching the water. Now your water could be contaminated. More importantly, I have water whenever I need it. I always have a Rubbermaid container filled with 10 gallons for top-offs. I don't have an auto top-off unit, nothing like that. I just put a gallon of water in here every day when I feed them at night. And then like today, that Rubbermaid container that's filled with fresh water, I'll just add the salt mix and I'll let it churn for an hour. I'll do my salt water, so I've always got fresh water on hand. I don't have to go to the store, I don't have to waste time, I don't have to waste gas money. I just wouldn't ever use tap water. My tap water is incredibly clean. I went to the county's website and you can see what's in the water and to what extent. I even brought it to a reef store and had it tested. They said it was really good, but still I won't use it. It's always RODI. I do it myself. Here's the guy. One more shot of this guy walking. Yes, buy a TDS meter as well. That's the only invert I have in my tank right now. No snails, nothing. An RODI system and a TDS meter. This guy's about 2.5 inches wide. He's one of my favorite guys in the tank. I love that guy. His legs are about 2.5 inches long. There's a really good shot of this Harlequin Sweet Lips. Bring this back a little bit. Mandy, it's really good to see you. Glad you're doing well. Thanks for asking about Jack. Let me bring this shade down. You know, so everyone's doing well. I don't do much to maintain this aquarium. I don't dose anything. I don't have, you know, reactors. I don't do any of that. That is a thin striped hermit crab on the sand. It's white stripes. Look, now he's camera shy. The difference between green and brown algae, if you've got brown algae, it's probably, maybe it's diatoms or it's due to a newer tank. I never bought fish online either. Green algae means you have an issue with nitrates. And here's the thing with green algae. If it turns into green hair algae and you test for nitrates, you're not going to get a proper reading because green algae feeds on nitrates. So your nitrates are going to probably read 0 because your green algae, or God forbid green hair algae, is feeding on it. So you want to get rid of your nitrates to get rid of your green algae. I have some green on the glass, as you can see. My nitrates are a little higher. I haven't tested them. I think it's 20 because I haven't dosed sugar. Thanks, Scott. I appreciate it. I do sugar dosing and I also do a weekly water change. The nitrates got a little out of control because I didn't do a weekly water change for a few weeks. But when I add more sand for a sand bed, a deeper sand bed, and that anaerobic bacteria grows because it lives in the deep sand bed where there's no oxygen. You can see the sand bed over here is like 2 or 3 inches deep. It's only an inch here, but it goes all the way to the bottom here. But on this side, look how deep that is. See, I'd like the whole aquarium to look like this, ideally. This is about 4 inches. Yeah, I might get another hermit crab. All right, good question on the sugar dosing. So sugar dosing, sugar is a carbon, so it's also called carbon dosing. And when you have anaerobic bacteria living in your aquarium, anaerobic bacteria gets rid of nitrates in your aquarium, okay? You need them. Anaerobic bacteria lives deep inside your rocks. So if you have the right kind of rock, like it would be especially good in this one. So anaerobic bacteria lives where there's no oxygen, but I also feed the anaerobic bacteria to increase their population. I feed them sugar. You can dose vodka, you can dose white vinegar, you can dose sugar, or you can get stuff by Seacham. I just use sugar, and the magic number I found is I dose 1 teaspoon daily. Keep a sugar container down at the bottom, and I dose 1 teaspoon of sugar per 60 gallons of aquarium water daily. And it helps the anaerobic bacteria population to grow. If your water gets a little cloudy, it's because there was a bacterial bloom. It's fine. It won't hurt the fish or your coral, and it goes away after half a day to a day. So I dose 1 teaspoon per 60 gallons daily. Yeah, 60. Actually, I dose more than that. I dose like 1.5 tablespoons a day because I've got larger fish and I know where to cut it off. Yeah, make sure your tank is mature, and most importantly, you've got to have a protein skimmer if you're going to do carbon dosing of any kind. Sugar, vodka, which is more expensive. I just use table sugar. Because the protein skimmer is going to extract those nitrates out of your water and the anaerobic bacteria when they die. Yeah, it totally works. I had a level of 60 nitrates in my aquarium. And after a week and a half, I had 0 nitrates. Freshwater fish, I used to have them years and years ago. I haven't been in it in a while, but yeah, I've heard peas as well. But try the fish flakes. Other than that, I can't help you much. I would cut, thanks Mandy, I would take a pea that's thawed, or it'll thaw when you put it in your tank. I'd cut it in half and let the fish go with that. How many months? Months for what? Okay, first of all, if you've got nitrates in your tank, feed your fish less. Don't feel sorry for them. There are times where I feed all these guys every other day. feed them less, do water changes weekly, make sure you get all the garbage off of your rocks, the fish crap, the fish food, so it doesn't rot. That's key, and do a water change every week. If you still have a problem, you can do the carbon dosing. Also, don't use crushed coral. For dosing, you do 1 teaspoon for every 60 gallons daily, and you should get to 0 in about a week or 2, depending on what fish you have in the tank and how big your tank is. So this is a 125 gallon tank plus 2 sumps. I dose 2 to 3 teaspoons a day, sometimes more. Sometimes I've done 2 tablespoons a day and my water doesn't get cloudy. Yeah, good luck. You'll love it. It's great. Just regular white table sugar. It works great. It's sugar. Sugar feeds bacteria, which is another reason, by the way, you shouldn't eat sugar, and a lot of it as a human, be it in your coffee, candy, whatever it is, because sugar feeds bacteria. And if you have bad bacteria or a bacterial infection like a staph infection like I did, sugar feeds the bacteria and it can make you worse. No, there's no side effects. It won't hurt your coral and it won't hurt your fish. Just you gotta have a protein skimmer. I don't eat much sugar, but I do like coffee with sugar. I can't have it black. There is no way. But yeah, if you want to lose weight and if you want to keep your body healthier, cut down on sugar because it also feeds the bacteria in your body. There's a little health tip. It's not just for aquariums, it's for you too. But in this case, it feeds the good bacteria that lives in the low oxygenated areas. And if you stir this sandbed, it's going to release that anaerobic bacteria and the nitrates. Thanks, King of Soul. So, you have a deep sandbed or any sandbed, don't disturb it, don't vacuum it. Yes, it does. And your protein skimmer will look darker and sludgier when you carbon dose because it's taken all that garbage out of the water, the nitrates. Which is why I want to add a second protein skimmer probably today. And I'll have a video on that next week. I've just been lazy. And I've got sand and mainly miracle mud in that second sump, which is where I want to put the protein skimmer. I'll put my second large protein skimmer in there. But because there's sand and mostly miracle mud in there, I got to figure out a way to scrape it away from the side so the protein skimmer can sit on the bottom. I don't want it sitting on the sand. Camera just fell. Sorry, guys. Yeah, the tank's looking really good. I keep the pumps on 24/7. I have an MP40, which I love, and I have high-door power heads. Oh, damn, again with this. I just have a simple high-door power head that goes on. It's not a wave maker, nothing. They're really inexpensive. They last forever. Nope, I have not added any new corals yet. The coral is still in the quarantine tank. It's doing great. You know what? If you don't have patience, a saltwater aquarium hobby will be incredibly stressful. Yeah, there have been times I wanted to quit and I never give up. I'm highly driven and I never give up. But there have been a couple times I wanted to. Like when I didn't know what the ick parasite was or marine velvet and it was killing all my fish. Once your aquarium is set up and it's stable, it's great. It's on an autopilot by itself. However, it's a slippery slope, and if you miss a water change or two especially, once you go down that slippery slope, it's going to be hard to come back. But you can, and that's what I do on my channel. I've made mistakes, of course, and I tell you guys what happened and what I did to resolve it. Like when I got green hair algae. I never had green hair algae in this tank, but it got so bad, nothing worked. Nothing worked. Nothing worked. I had phosphates like crazy. And in the end, it was hydrogen peroxide dosing. And I've done videos on that with links to the product on Amazon, and that's what worked. This tank is 3 years old, I think. The channel's been around for 4.5 years. Hey Gunter, no problem. I should do live streams more. Usually I just do videos. I really wasn't in the mood to do a video today, to be honest. I just wanted to chat with you guys and just tell you what's going on. I guess I could just talk about the tank and babble forever. But also if you guys have questions, that's great too. Yeah, get away from the tap water. Don't use it. These fish are so delicate, and all the microscopic creatures in the tank are so delicate. You don't want to have any tap water. No chlorine. I mean, your water might look clear to you, but microscopically it's just not. Yeah, dechlorinator or an RODI system. An RODI unit. Get yourself an RODI unit. No, the tangs don't bite me, but once in a while when I do water changes, the big guy, the Lavalier tang, he'll pick at my hand. Nothing bad. He's like, hey, what's up? I used to have a couple clownfish that went crazy when I put my hand in there and I tried to clean, because they're very territorial. Clownfish are very territorial, but no one bothers me here in this tank. They just peck at me once in a while, like, hey, what are you doing when I do a water change? So I guess that's it, guys. I'll wrap up unless you have any last minute questions. Thank you so much to everybody who donated cash. I really appreciate it. That means so much to me. I love hanging out with you guys, and I love doing the content. And it was great to see you all. I hope you enjoy your 3-day weekend. And take it easy. The weather is going to be really nice here in Chicago. It's going to be like 72 for at least the next week. That's my favorite weather. You're welcome. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for subscribing. Hit the like button. Check out the video description for all the links on the products I use, the Facebook group, blah, blah, blah. Gunter, never use tap water. Always get water from the REEF store or make your own fresh water using an RODI unit. I've got links to them in the video description. It's the letters R-O-D as in Dave, I. An RODI system. It hooks up to your faucet. It's really easy to do. In fact, mine just screws onto the faucet, and the water that's purified goes into a Rubbermaid container through a little hose I drilled in the side of the Rubbermaid container, and then the other tube goes down the drain. Oh, by the way, I've been asked this a lot. Does your water bill go up? No, it doesn't. Not $1, believe it or not. Think about it. I make 10 gallons of fresh water that's pure. How much water are you using daily in a shower? Think about that. Another great point. That's why I also stopped getting water from the REEF store. Same with my brother. They didn't mix the salt properly because some of the fish died because the salt content was too large. You risk parasites coming in on their water, or you can get green algae from their water. Who's to say that the water they're giving you is pure anyway, right? You don't know. Maybe they're trying to rip people off and they're just giving them tap water. I don't know. I like a controlled environment. I like to know that everything I'm doing is because of me. I'm in control. I make the water. Everything is contained here in the house. So if there's issues, you can take out all variables. Well, I didn't get the water from a REEF store. What's going on in my house? Or what's going on with this? I like to oversee everything. Keep that in mind. Alright guys, I guess that's it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next weekend. Thanks again for the tips, the cash. I don't know. Probably not. Probably not going. Yeah, Gabriel, see? I use wastewater for laundry. Some people use it for the garden, or they just throw it in the backyard. I just let it go down the drain. I mean, you're really not wasting any water. It seems like it, but it's 10 gallons a week for me, maybe 20. Again, how much are you using in your shower? I mean, come on. You got 3 or 4 people in your household, or even if it's just you, daily showers, dishwasher, washing dishes, everything, 10 or 20 gallons, that's nothing. My water bill did not go up at all, and neither did my brother's. Don't let that concern you. All right, guys, I'll see you next weekend. Thank you so much for watching and listening to me babble. Enjoy your tanks, enjoy your long 3-day weekend, and I'll see you next weekend. Have a great one.